Hello, growers. Say goodbye to heavy sandbags and hello to modern growers' quick hoops low tunnels. Protect your plants from pests, wind, rain, and frost without the hassle of sandbags or flimsy hoops. Our patented design eliminates the need for clamps and ropes, while the unique wire system keeps covers secure yet easily accessible. Tested in the strong winds of New Zealand for over 20 years, quick hoops are light, strong, portable, and versatile. Most importantly, they're designed for field use. These aren't some lightweight system that only looks great in a greenhouse. Our hoops are designed to last in harsh field conditions. Use them with any covering to grow year-round and safeguard your crops. Shade cloth, frost blanket, insect net, clear poly, no problem. Quick Hoops can handle them. Get Quick Hoops today at shop.moderngrower.co and protect your crops for years to come. I really liked what you wrote in the email. So you said, I'm really intrigued by the disconnect I'm sensing between my own experience and some of the assumptions floating around the farm podcasting and blogging world, especially amongst young growers and what's possible on a small farm. When you say that and when you think about this, what's the first thing that comes to mind as part of the disconnect between, I'll say, the narrative that's out there and the reality that you see in Oklahoma?
Yeah, I think it's several different things. The first thing that always comes to mind when I think about this topic is watching other growers, like young growers especially, near me or hearing about their stories. And they're starting a farm and they have a very specific vision in mind of what they have to do. They have to have this specific style and this specific list of crops. And if they vary too far from that, they're not following the best advice. And then I've watched some young growers quit farming, and it felt like it was mainly not because they were really failing, but because there was an image in their mind of this ideal of profitability, high margins. And I think what I'm seeing with your conversation, Diego, with Alec, is you're showing a really realistic approach where Alec has some ideas in his mind about what's the best practice for approaching a farmer's market and a market garden, but he's also being very adaptable. And I think that adaptability is like super key. And I don't know that it gets enough play. That you got to start somewhere, but then you're always just going to be adapting to your actual local conditions and your actual personal ability and personal preference. And that may not look like what another farmer is doing. And I think a lot of us expect that if we're not doing what someone else is doing, then we're doing it wrong.
Yeah, it's something I have heard through the years from farms I've visited, farmers I've talked to, is they interpret what maybe, I'll say, some of the louder names say as gospel and a literal recipe. And it's like, oh, well, so-and-so tried that and they followed so-and-so's method and it didn't work. And I've always tried to think about it like, well, yes, of course, that's a starting point, and then you adapt. So your critique isn't not that high value crops or high margin crops don't work. It's just they might work in your location and they might not. You just can't force the issue, try and put the square peg in the round hole. And if it doesn't work, throw in the towel. You need that next phase of pivoting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think you just can't be too dogmatic about an approach or a style because it might not work on your land. It might not work for you personally. And I think what I'm doing is not, it's probably on the profitability side per crop or per acre or whatever. It may not be what anyone would aspire to if they looked at it on paper or compared it to someone else's. But I feel like I have a really comfortable existence on my farm financially, but also in how much time it takes to do what we do, how much time it takes to achieve the amount of production that we achieve. And I think some of that is just having a little bit more relaxed approach to what I must do, what I have to do. I don't know if that makes any sense or not.
It's tough because you use dollars for comparison, right? And that is a metric. And we use that to say, well, how well am I doing relative to somebody else? And I've thought about this a lot lately because I've talked to a lot of business owners, and other spaces I was going to write about this weekend, but I met somebody who had a really successful business, totally unrelated to farming, and they were clearly doing really well, but they were home like 5 days a month, so never saw their
Mm,
kids. So
mm,
the thought I had is like, that's the danger of looking at success on a one metric scale. In that case, well, it's the numbers, right? And he
mhm.
might not even have been that successful, but I just made this assumption in my head. And I think we do that
Sure.
hearing podcasts and Instagram things and videos and courses. It's like, wow, look how good this person's doing, but you know the whole story. Maybe they're just not pleasant. Would you say that your perspective, I found a farm style and farm business that fits the lifestyle that works for me in my location? Is that the gist of it?
Maybe a more qualified that I think I am finding more and more by adapting the style that I have freedom to create the lifestyle that I want. Whereas if I had kept, and I'll say, I think when I first started farming, I wanted financial success at a very specific level. I wanted to hit certain sales figures and keep growing. And I thought I needed to probably eventually sell into a bigger city. Like I'm less than an hour from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And in my mind, I had first 8 years honestly thought, well, that's where I have to go. I have to get to that point at some point, or I'm really not successful. And little by little, our local market grew with the ability to grow the crops in step with that. And yeah, basically what you said is true. It has worked in a fairly small city to have a pretty diverse array of crops, more diverse than the advice than I've typically heard that people don't think is manageable. And yeah, I'm finding that as long as I don't keep grinding and keep pushing and trying to get to some next level, I'm able to take afternoons off and I'm going to the lake more often and I'm seeing my friends and family a little more often. And I still want to do better at those kind of personal goals, but it's working. And that's including not really taking super seriously the advice to find a more populated market and narrow down to just maybe a couple handfuls of the most profitable crops. It's not that I've ignored that advice. I think it's great advice. I think I said that maybe in the email. It's great advice for a new grower because you don't want to get yourself in a situation that's totally unworkable and then have nowhere to go in terms of a market that's too small or you don't put enough time into learning to grow the crops that really are going to pay your bills because you're running after a thing that everybody else wants you to grow or whatever.
Hello, growers. If you enjoy podcasts like this one, tune into my podcast In Search of Soil on YouTube for a deep dive into the mysteries beneath our feet. Join me as I explore topics such as mycorrhizal fungi, mushrooms, compost, biochar, and more. It's a soil nerd's dream. We're going deep. We're talking to scientists about all things soil related. Whether you're a seasoned farmer or a gardener just starting out, our podcast has something for everyone. Listen in and grow with us. Check out In Search of Soil on YouTube.